In the shadowy tales of ancient history, few names stirred as much fear as Attila the Hun. Known as the Scourge of God, he was a force that shook the mighty Roman Empire to its core. His relentless raids and brutal campaigns left cities in ruins and entire armies trembling. But who was the man behind this terror? What fueled his rise to such power? Attila wasn't born a king, but he rose to become one of the most feared rulers of his time, wielding influence over vast lands and people. While the Roman emperors were protected by their armies, walls, and riches, Attila moved like a storm, tearing through defenses with his unstoppable Huns. For Rome, he became a symbol of approaching doom, an unstoppable force that seemed almost supernatural. Yet, there was more to him than destruction alone. Diplomats and allies spoke of his intelligence, his shrewdness, and even his odd sense of loyalty. He held empires hostage with his demands but also crafted delicate alliances. Attila's presence was like a dark legend, one that would haunt the memories of Rome and echo through history. His story isn't just one of conquest but of a power that reshaped an era. Alongside these haunting tales, one question lingers: what drove Attila to become the merciless force he was? What led him to embrace a path marked by terror and brutality? Was it ambition, vengeance, or something deeper, hidden in the shadows of his past? To truly understand the man behind the legend, we must look back to his early life and uncover the forces that shaped his rise into history's most feared conqueror. Etymology. Some scholars think that the name Attila comes from East Germanic roots. They suggest it is based on the Gothic or Japitic word Atta, which means father, and uses the suffix ila, meaning little. This would make Attila's name mean little father, similar to how the name Wulfila means little wolf. The famous linguists Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm first suggested this idea in the 19th century. Experts like Menschenhelfen and Gerhard Dorfer support this view, saying it fits well with Gothic language patterns. Scholars Alexander Saveliev and Chunghwan Zhang also believe that Attila's name likely has Gothic origins. However, some suggest that it could be a Germanic version of a Hun nickname. Other researchers argue that Attila's name might come from Turkic origins. For example, Omeljan Pritsak suggested it could be a title from the Turkic words es, meaning great or old, and til, meaning sea or ocean, forming a name that implies a universal ruler. J. Mikola also linked the name to the Turkic word at, meaning name or fame. Another idea by H. Althoff is that it could connect to the Turkish word atli, meaning horseman, or et, meaning course. Menschenhelfen finds some of these theories interesting but unlikely, and M. Sneedle notes that none of these ideas have been widely accepted. Some scholars, like Hyun Jin Kim, believe a Turkic origin is possible, while others, like Dorfer, argue that a leader might have a name from another culture without it defining his identity. For example, English King George VI had a Greek name, and Suleiman the Magnificent had an Arabic one, yet neither were of those ethnicities. M. Sneedle suggests that Attila's name might link to the Turkic Mongolian word et, gelding or warhorse, and Turkish atli, which could mean one who owns or supplies warhorses. Historiography and source. Writing a complete history of Attila is difficult because nearly all the existing sources are from Greek and Latin writers who were enemies of the Huns. Even though Attila's contemporaries wrote about him, only fragments of these records remain. One of the most valuable sources on Attila is the Byzantine diplomat and historian Priscus, who wrote in Greek. Priscus not only observed Attila but interacted with him as part of a diplomatic mission from the Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius II to Attila's court in 449. While Priscus's account may be biased due to his position, his writing provides a wealth of information about Attila's court and interactions with the Eastern Roman Empire. Priscus is also the only known writer to provide a description of Attila's appearance. He wrote an 8-volume history covering the events of the late Roman Empire from 430 to 476, making it one of the most extensive accounts of this period. Although most of Priscus's original work is lost, sections have been preserved through later historians, especially those from the 6th century, such as Procopius and Jordanes. Jordanes, in his The Origin and Deeds of the Goths, frequently reference Priscus's accounts, particularly in discussions of the Hunnic Empire and its interactions with other cultures. This work has helped historians understand the Hunnic Empire and its place in the broader history of Europe. Another source from this period is Marcellinus Comes, a chancellor who served under Emperor Justinian. Marcellinus also documented the relationships between the Huns and the Eastern Roman Empire, adding to the picture of Hunnic influence and power during Attila's reign. Besides Priscus, many ecclesiastical, or church-based, writings from this era contain information about Attila and the Huns. However, this information is scattered across various documents and can be difficult to authenticate because these records were copied repeatedly over the centuries, often changing slightly with each copy. This copying continued from the 6th century all the way to the 17th century, leading to a risk of distortion or exaggeration in these sources. Additionally, writers in Hungary during the 12th century sought to depict the Huns as noble ancestors. So they modified certain historical details to portray them in a more heroic light, while also weaving in their own legends. This makes it challenging to separate myth from fact in these later accounts. The Huns themselves did not leave written records, so their history was passed down orally. This tradition included epic stories and poems that were recited and memorized through generations. Some of this oral history eventually reached us indirectly through the literature of the Scandinavians and Germans, who were neighbors of the Huns and began writing these stories down between the 9th and 13th centuries. As a result, Attila appears as a central figure in several medieval epics, such as the Nibelungenlied, as well as various Eddas and sagas. These stories portray Attila in various roles, often emphasizing his leadership and legendary status, though they are likely more myth than fact. In addition to literary sources, archaeological research has provided valuable insights into the Hunnic lifestyle, art, and methods of warfare. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of battles and sieges involving the Huns, giving us a glimpse into their military strategies and conflicts with neighboring civilizations. However, despite extensive searching, the exact location of Attila's tomb and his capital city remain undiscovered, leaving significant gaps in our understanding of Attila's final years and the Hunnic Empire's physical centers of power. Early life and background. The Huns were a group of nomadic people from Eurasia who first appeared east of the Volga River and migrated into Western Europe around 370 AD. They created an extensive empire in Europe and were known for their military prowess, particularly their skills in mounted archery and javelin throwing. Although the Huns had begun forming settlements before reaching Europe, they largely maintained a pastoral lifestyle. Their main sources of food were meat and milk from their herds, reflecting their background as warrior herders. The origins and language of the Huns have puzzled historians for centuries. Some researchers believe their leaders likely spoke a Turkic language, possibly related to the modern Chuvash language. The Encyclopedia of European Peoples suggests that the Huns, especially those who migrated west, could have been a mix of Central Asian Turkic, Mongolic, and Ugric peoples. This multi-ethnic background likely contributed to their diverse and adaptable society. Attila's family was of noble heritage and his father, Munzuk, had royal ties as the brother of Hunnic kings Oktar and Ruga. These brothers ruled together in the early 5th century, a practice of dual kingship observed at different times among the Huns. Though historians remain uncertain if this dual leadership was a formal institution, a custom, or a unique arrangement. Attila's birth date is widely debated. Some historians like Eric de Schott and Hermann Schreiber suggest he was born in 395. While others, such as Yaroslav Lebedinsky and Katalin Escher, believe he was born between the 390s and early 400s. Other scholars propose 406 as another possible date for his birth. Attila's early years were spent in a period of significant upheaval. His people, who were initially nomadic, had recently entered Europe and rapidly expanded their influence. In the 370s, the Huns crossed the Volga River, first conquering the Alans and then moving to challenge the Gothic kingdom between the Carpathians and the Danube. With their formidable mounted archers, they quickly gained a reputation as nearly unbeatable warriors, creating fear among Germanic tribes. Large groups of these tribes, fleeing from the Huns, moved into Roman territories along the Rhine and Danube rivers. By 376, the Goths crossed the Danube into Roman lands and, although they initially sought refuge, they soon rebelled and defeated Emperor Valens at the Battle of Adrianople in 378. This triggered further displacement, as other groups, including the Vandals, Alans, Suebi, and Burgundians, crossed into Roman Gaul on December 31, 406, to escape the Huns' advance. At this time, the Roman Empire was divided into eastern and western segments, with one government based in Ravenna and the other in Constantinople. During Attila's life, both parts were often ruled by emperors from the Theodosian dynasty, though political struggles continued to complicate the balance of power. The Huns controlled a vast territory, but their borders were fluid, defined by the loyalties of various ethnic groups under their sway. While some of these groups integrated with the Huns, many others retained their unique identities and leaders, acknowledging the Hunnic king as their overlord. The Huns, while a threat to the Romans, also played a complex role as allies, driving Germanic tribes into Roman lands but also serving as mercenaries against the same tribes. Relations between the Huns and Romans were, at times, cooperative. Roman leaders would sometimes enlist the Huns in their internal conflicts. For example, the usurper Jonas recruited thousands of Hunnic warriors to support his struggle against Emperor Valentinian III in 424. Roman general Aetius, who later became patrician of the West, managed these alliances. And the Romans exchanged ambassadors and hostages with the Huns for nearly 50 years, from 401 to 450, securing several military victories with their help. The Romans saw these payments as compensation for Hunnic assistance, while the Huns viewed them as tribute, a sign of Roman submission. By the time Attila came of age under the rule of his uncle Ruga, the Huns had grown into a formidable power. Their influence was so strong that even Nestorius, Patriarch of Constantinople, remarked on their dominance, stating that the Huns had become both masters and slaves of the Romans, underscoring the complicated relationship between the two empires. Campaigns against the Eastern Roman Empire. The death of Rugila, also known as Rua or Ruga, in 434 left his nephews, Attila and Bleda, in charge of the united Hun tribes. When they took control, the Huns were negotiating with the Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius II's envoys to get back several renegades who had sought refuge in the Eastern Roman Empire. These renegades might have been Hunnic nobles who disagreed with the brothers' leadership. In 435, Attila and Bleda met with the Roman envoys at Margus, now Požarevac. They sat on horseback, which was typical for Huns, and negotiated a favorable treaty. The Romans agreed to return the fugitives, double their tribute from 350 Roman pounds, approximately 115 kilograms, of gold, open their markets to Hunnic traders, and pay a ransom of 8 solidi for each Roman captured by the Huns. Happy with the agreement, the Huns left the Roman Empire and returned to their homeland in the Great Hungarian Plain. This allowed Theodosius to strengthen Constantinople's defenses by building the city's first sea wall and fortifying the border along the Danube River. For the next few years, the Huns remained out of the Romans' sight while invading the Sassanid Empire. However, they were defeated in Armenia and eventually turned their attention back to Europe. In 440, the Huns returned in full force, attacking merchants at a market on the northern bank of the Danube that had been established under the previous treaty. Crossing the Danube, they devastated cities in Illyricum and attacked forts along the river, including Viminatium, according to the historian Priscus. Their advance began at Margus, where they demanded the Romans hand over a bishop who held property that Attila believed belonged to him. While the Romans debated what to do with the bishop, he secretly escaped to the Huns and betrayed the city. As the Huns attacked city-states along the Danube, the Vandals, led by Gaiseric, captured the western Roman province of Africa and its capital, Carthage. Africa was the wealthiest province of the Western Empire and a key source of food for Rome. Meanwhile, the Sassanid Shah Yazdegerd II invaded Armenia in 441. The Romans, having stripped the Balkan area of forces to send to Sicily for an expedition against the Vandals, left Attila and Bleda with a clear path into the Balkans, which they invaded in 441. The Huns sacked Margus and Viminatium, then took Singidunum, modern-day Belgrade, and Sirmium. In 442, Theodosius recalled his troops from Sicily and ordered the minting of new coins to finance operations against the Huns. He was confident that he could defeat them and refused the Hunnic king's demands. In response, Attila launched a campaign in 443. For the first time, his forces used battering rams and rolling siege towers to attack military centers such as Rashiara and Nice, where they killed many of the inhabitants. Priscus described Nisus as deserted, with only a few sick people left in the churches. The ground near the river was filled with the bones of soldiers who had died in battle. Advancing along the Nisava River, the Huns captured Serdica, Sofia, Philippopolis, Plovdiv, and Arcadiopolis, Lulbergas. They destroyed a Roman army outside Constantinople but were stopped by the city's double walls. They also defeated a second Roman army near Kallipolis, Gelibolu. Unable to resist effectively, Theodosius sent Anatolius, the Magister Militum per Orientum, to negotiate peace. The terms were harsher than before. The emperor agreed to pay 6,000 Roman pounds, about 2,000 kilograms, of gold as punishment for violating the treaty. Increased the annual tribute to 2,100 Roman pounds, approximately 700 kilograms, of gold, and raised the ransom for each Roman prisoner to 12 solidi. The Huns' demands were met for a time, and the kings withdrew into the interior of their empire. After Bleda's death, likely around 445, Attila became the sole ruler of the Huns. Solitary kingship. In 447, Attila once again invaded the Eastern Roman Empire, moving south through Moesia. The Roman army, led by the Gothic Magister Militum Arnigisclus, confronted him at the Battle of the Utus. Although the Romans suffered heavy losses, they managed to inflict significant damage on the Huns. Despite this, the Huns continued their rampage through the Balkans, reaching as far as Thermopylae without any serious opposition. Constantinople was saved by the Isaurian troops under Magister Militum per Orientum Zeno. Prefect Constantinus played a crucial role by organizing the repair of the city's walls, which had been weakened by previous earthquakes. In some areas, he even constructed new fortifications in front of the old ones to enhance the city's defenses. Callinicus, in his Life of Saint Hypatius, described the situation during this time. The barbarian nation of the Huns, which was in Thrace, grew so powerful that they captured more than 100 cities. Constantinople was nearly in danger, causing many people to flee. There were so many murders and bloodshed that the dead could not be counted. They took over churches and monasteries, killing many monks and maidens in the process. This account highlights the chaos and destruction caused by Attila's invasion as the Huns moved through the region, creating fear and devastation among the people. In the West. In 450, Attila announced his plan to attack the Visigoth kingdom of Toulouse by forming an alliance with Emperor Valentinian III. He had previously maintained a good relationship with the Western Roman Empire, especially with the influential general Flavius Aetius. Aetius had spent some time in exile among the Huns in 433. And the support Attila provided against the Goths and Bagaudae helped Aetius earn the honorary title of Magister Militum in the West. Gaiseric, the Vandal king, who opposed the Visigoths, may have also influenced Attila's ambitions through his gifts and diplomatic efforts. Complicating matters, Valentinian's sister, Honoria, sent Attila a plea for help along with her engagement ring in the spring of 450. She was trying to escape a forced marriage to a Roman senator. While she likely did not intend to propose marriage, Attila interpreted her message as such and agreed, demanding half of the Western Empire as her dowry. When Valentinian learned of this plan, he was persuaded by his mother, Galla Placidia, to exile Honoria instead of executing her. He also sent a letter to Attila, firmly denying any legitimacy to the marriage proposal. In response, Attila sent an envoy to Ravenna, asserting that Honoria was innocent and that the proposal was genuine. He declared his intention to claim what he believed was rightfully his. Attila also became involved in a succession dispute after the death of a Frankish ruler. He backed the elder son, while Aetius supported the younger. The identities and locations of these kings remain unclear. Attila gathered his vassals, including the Gepids, Ostrogoths, Rhygians, Syrians, Herals, Thuringians, Alans, and Burgundians, and began his march west. By 451, he had reached Belgica with an army that was said to number around 500,000, according to the historian Jordanes. On April 7, Attila captured Metz and also took Strasbourg. Other cities suffered attacks during this time. For example, Nicasius was killed at the altar of his church in Reims, while Servetus is said to have saved Tondrin through prayer. Saint Genevieve was credited with saving Paris, and Lupus, the bishop of Troyes, reportedly met with Attila in person to protect his city. Aetius gathered troops from the Franks, Burgundians, and Celts to confront Attila. A diplomatic mission by Avitus, along with Attila's ongoing advance, persuaded the Visigoth king Theodoric I to ally with the Romans. The combined forces reached Orleans ahead of Attila, successfully halting his progress. Aetius then pursued the Huns and engaged them at a location believed to be near Catalaunum, in modern-day Chalons and Champagne. Attila chose to fight on open plains where his cavalry could be most effective. The armies clashed in the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, which is often seen as a strategic victory for the Visigoth-Roman alliance. Theodoric was killed during the battle, and Aetius chose not to pursue further advantage, fearing the consequences of a Visigothic victory as much as a defeat. From Aetius' perspective, the outcome was favorable. Theodoric was dead, Attila was forced to retreat in disarray, and the Romans could claim a victory. Invasion of Italy and death. In 452, Attila returned to renew his claim to marry Honoria, invading and causing destruction throughout Italy. During these attacks, people fled to small islands in the Venetian lagoon, leading to the establishment of communities that would eventually become Venice. Attila's army sacked many cities, and they completely destroyed Aquileia, leaving it so devastated that its original site became hard to identify. Aetius, unable to muster a strong enough force to confront Attila directly, managed to slow his advance using only a small, shadowy army. Eventually, Attila stopped at the river Po, where disease and starvation may have begun to affect his troops, which likely played a role in ending his invasion. Emperor Valentinian III sent 3 envoys to meet with Attila, high-ranking civilian officials Gennadius Avienus and Trigetius, along with Pope Leo I. They met Attila near Mantua at the river Mincio, where Pope Leo successfully negotiated with him, convincing Attila to withdraw from Italy and agree to peace talks with the emperor. Historian Prosper of Aquitaine briefly describes this historic meeting but credits Pope Leo entirely for the successful negotiations. Priscus noted that Attila was also influenced by superstitious fears regarding the fate of Alaric, who died shortly after sacking Rome in 410. In 451, Italy had suffered a severe famine, and the crop situation had not improved in 452. Attila's destructive invasion of northern Italy worsened the harvest, and any advance on Rome would have required supplies that were unavailable in Italy. Even if he had taken the city, it would not have helped his supply situation. Consequently, it was more advantageous for Attila to seek peace and retreat to his homeland. Additionally, an Eastern Roman force had crossed the Danube under another officer named Aetius, who had attended the Council of Chalcedon the previous year. This force defeated the Huns left behind by Attila to guard their home territories. Therefore, Attila faced immense pressure, both from natural challenges and military threats, to withdraw from Italy without ever setting foot south of the Po. In his Chronica Minora, Hydatius writes that the Huns, who had been plundering Italy and attacking several cities, suffered divine punishment in the form of disasters like famine and disease. They were also attacked by auxiliary forces sent by Emperor Marcian, led by Aetius. As a result, the Huns faced heavy losses both in Italy and at home. Ultimately, these pressures forced them to make peace with the Romans. Death. After Emperor Theodosius II, Marcian became the new emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire and decided to stop paying tribute to the Huns. This led Attila to withdraw from Italy and return to his palace across the Danube, where he began to plan another attack on Constantinople to reclaim the tribute. However, Attila died in the early months of 453. The historian Priscus provides a traditional account of his death, stating that he was at a feast celebrating his recent marriage to the beautiful Ildiko, whose name suggests Gothic or Ostrogothic roots. During the festivities, Attila suffered severe bleeding and ultimately died. Some speculate that he may have had a nosebleed that caused him to choke in a drunken stupor, while others believe he succumbed to internal bleeding due to ruptured esophageal varices. These fragile veins can easily burst, especially in individuals who have consumed excessive amounts of alcohol over the years, leading to fatal hemorrhage. An alternative account of Attila's death was recorded 80 years later by the Roman chronicler Marcellinus Comes, who claimed that Attila, king of the Huns and ravager of the provinces of Europe, was pierced by the hand and blade of his wife. Some modern analysts suggest he may have been assassinated, but most historians regard these claims as mere rumors and prefer Priscus's contemporary account, which was later recounted by Jordanes in the 6th century. According to Priscus, on the morning after Attila's death, his royal attendants sensed something was wrong. After a loud commotion, they broke down the doors and found Attila dead from excessive bleeding, without any visible wounds. Ildiko was found weeping quietly under her veil. Following their customs, the attendants mourned him by pulling out their hair and marking their faces with deep wounds to ensure Attila was remembered not with soft cries and tears, but with the blood of men. A remarkable event was said to have occurred connected to his death. In a dream, a god appeared to Emperor Marcian, revealing the broken bow of Attila, suggesting that the Huns had relied heavily on that weapon. Priscus mentions that he believes this account to be credible, as Attila was considered such a formidable threat that the gods wanted to inform rulers of his death as a blessing. After his death, Attila's body was laid out in a silken tent in a plain for people to admire. The finest horsemen of the Huns rode around in circles, much like in circus games, recounting Attila's deeds in a funeral song. They praised him as the chief of the Huns, a king born of Mundiech, and lord over mighty tribes. He was recognized for capturing cities and terrifying both Roman empires, accepting annual tribute to spare the rest from plunder. Remarkably, he fell not in battle or by betrayal, but peacefully within his own nation, enjoying happiness without any pain. Once they finished mourning him, the Huns celebrated a strava over his tomb, expressing a mix of grief and joy. In the dead of night, they buried him, binding his coffins with gold, silver, and iron. This combination symbolized his greatness, as iron represented his power to conquer nations, while gold and silver reflected the honors he received from both empires. They included the arms of enemies he had defeated and valuable trappings adorned with gems, emphasizing his royal status. To ensure that the wealth buried with him remained hidden from prying eyes, those who buried Attila were executed, a grim price for their duty. This led to a sudden death for those who buried him, as well as for Attila himself. Descendants. After Attila's death, his sons, Elik, Dengizik, and Ernak, were eager to take control. But their ambition led to the downfall of their father's empire. They demanded an equal division of the nations, wanting to allocate warlike kings and their peoples among themselves as if sharing a family estate. This demand was met with resistance, particularly from a Germanic alliance led by Ardaric, the Gepid ruler known for his loyalty to Attila. The Gepids revolted against the Huns, feeling mistreated and reduced to a state of servitude. This conflict culminated in the Battle of Nideo in 454 AD, where the Huns faced off against the alliance. Elik, the eldest son of Attila, was killed during this battle, marking a significant blow to their leadership. In the aftermath, Attila's sons viewed the Goths as traitors to their rule and attacked them, perceiving their actions as those of fugitive slaves. They targeted Ostrogothic co-ruler Valamir, who had fought alongside Ardaric and Attila at the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains. However, this attack failed, and some Huns, likely those following Ernak, retreated to Scythia. Dengizic made another attempt to invade across the Danube in 468 AD but was defeated by the Ostrogoths at the Battle of Bassiani. He was killed the following year by the Roman Gothic general Anagast, which effectively ended Hunnic dominance in the region. While the names and some deeds of Attila's numerous children and relatives are known, credible genealogical records quickly faded away, making it difficult to trace Attila's descendants. Nevertheless, many genealogists have attempted to construct a lineage for various medieval rulers. One of the more credible claims comes from the Nominalia of the Bulgarian Khans, which traces descent to mythological figures of Vitahul and Ernik from the Dulo clan of the Bulgars. Additionally, the Hungarian Arpad dynasty also claimed to be direct descendants of Attila. Medieval Hungarian chronicles, including the Gesta Hungarorum, Gesta Honorum et Hungarorum, Chronicon Pictum, Buda Chronicle, and Chronica Hungarorum, all assert that the Arpad dynasty and the Aba clan are descendants of Attila, reinforcing the idea of a lasting legacy from the infamous ruler. Appearance and character. There is no direct first-hand account of Attila's appearance, but Jordanes offers a possible second-hand description based on the writings of Priscus. Attila was described as a man destined to shake the foundations of nations, known as the Scourge of all lands. His presence inspired dread, as terrifying rumors about him spread far and wide. He carried himself with pride, often rolling his eyes, which conveyed the strength of his confident spirit. Although he loved war, he was also strategic and careful in his actions. He was known for being gracious to those who sought his favor and lenient to those he had protected. Physically, Attila was of short stature with a broad chest and a large head. His eyes were small, and he had a thin beard sprinkled with gray. He possessed a flat nose and dark skin, hinting at his ancestry. Some scholars have pointed out that these features could resemble those typically associated with East Asian people, suggesting that Attila's ancestors might have originated from that region. Other historians believe that his appearance might have been characteristic of certain Scythian tribes. Later folklore and iconography. The name Attila has many variations across different languages. In Old Norse, he is referred to as Atli or Attil. In Middle High German, he is called Etzel, particularly in the epic poem Nibelungenlied. In Old English, he appears as Etla, while in Hungarian, he is most commonly known as Attila, though Attila and Attil are also used. In Turkish, he can be referred to as Attila, Attila, Atile, or Attila. Finally, in Kazakh, the names Adil and Idil are used, which translate to same/similar and to use, respectively, in Mongolian. Attila and Hungarian tradition. The medieval Hungarian chronicle tradition is centered around the idea that the Huns and Hungarians share a historical connection, emphasizing a continuity between them. The Arpad dynasty, recognized as the founding royal family of Hungary, claimed descent from Attila. Various medieval Hungarian chronicles asserted that Grand Prince Arpad was a direct descendant of Attila. According to the Chronicon Pictum, in the year 401 AD, which marked the 28th year since the Hungarians arrived in Pannonia, the Huns honored Attila as their king. They regarded him as the son of Bendigas, who had previously served as a captain. Attila then appointed his brother Buda as a prince and judge, governing the land from the river Tisza to the river Don. He called himself King of the Hungarians, Fear of the World, and Scourge of God. In the Gesta Hungarorum, Arpad states, "The land stretching between the Danube and the Tisza used to belong to my forefather, the mighty Attila." King Matthias of Hungary, who ruled from 1458 to 1490, was pleased to be referred to as the second Attila. Johannes Thuryx's Chronica Hungarorum aimed to glorify Attila, a task that had been overlooked in earlier texts. He introduced the title Scourge of God, which later Hungarian writers adopted. Thuryx sought to elevate Attila's image, portraying him as a model for King Matthias, suggesting that Matthias shared Attila's qualities, almost bringing the legendary Hammer of the World to life. Legend surrounding Attila. According to Jordanes, who expanded on Priscus's writings, Attila was said to have owned the holy war sword of the Scythians, a gift from Mars, which granted him the title of Prince of the entire world. Lampert of Hersfeld noted in his contemporary chronicles that just before 1071, the sword of Attila was presented to Otto of Nordheim by the exiled Queen of Hungary, Anastasia of Kiev. This sword, which is a cavalry saber, is now housed in the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna and is believed to have been crafted by Hungarian goldsmiths in the 9th or 10th century. Legends of Attila and his meeting with Pope Leo I. In the medieval period, an anonymous chronicler depicted the meeting between Pope Leo I and Attila, suggesting that it was attended by Saints Peter and Paul. This portrayal aimed to resonate with the beliefs and tastes of that time. The scene was later captured artistically by Renaissance artist Raphael and sculptor Algardi. 18th-century historian Edward Gibbon praised this depiction as one of the most remarkable legends of church history. According to the Chronican Pictum, a medieval Hungarian chronicle, the Pope made a promise to Attila. He assured him that if he left Rome peacefully, one of Attila's successors would be granted a holy crown, interpreted as referring to the Holy Crown of Hungary. Attila in Germanic heroic legend. Attila is portrayed in various histories and chronicles as a great and noble king. He appears prominently in 3 Norse texts, Ad Latvia, Volsunga Saga, and Atlamal. In the Polish chronicle, Attila is referred to as Aquila. Frithjof of Michaelsburg and Otto of Freising criticized some songs, labeling them as vulgar fables. These stories place Theoderic the Great, Attila, and Ermanaric as contemporaries, although readers of Jordanes would know this was inaccurate. This refers to historical poems about Dietrich von Bern, Theoderic, where Etzel, the German name for Attila, becomes Dietrich's refuge during his exile from his cruel uncle Ermenrich. Etzel is especially notable in the poems Dietrich's Flucht and Rabenschlacht. Additionally, he is depicted as Kriemhild's second husband in the Nibelungenlied, where Kriemhild causes the downfall of both the Hunnish kingdom and her Burgundian relatives. Early modern and modern reception. In 1812, composer Ludwig van Beethoven had the idea to create an opera about Attila and sought August von Kotzebue to write the libretto, but this opera was never completed. However, in 1846, Giuseppe Verdi composed an opera loosely based on Attila's invasion of Italy. During World War I, Allied propaganda referred to Germans as Huns, stemming from a 1900 speech by Emperor Wilhelm II, where he praised Attila's military skills, as noted in Jawaharlal Nehru's Glimpses of World History. An article in Der Spiegel on November 6, 1948, remarked that the sword of Attila was seen as a threat hanging over Austria. American author Cecilia Holland wrote a historical novel titled The Death of Attila, 1973. Where Attila serves as a powerful background figure, significantly influencing the lives of the protagonists, a young Hunnic warrior and a Germanic warrior. In modern Hungary and Turkey, the names Attila and its Turkish variant Attila are commonly used as male first names. In Hungary, several public places bear Attila's name, including 10 Attila streets in Budapest, one of which is a prominent street behind Buda Castle. Additionally, when the Turkish armed forces invaded Cyprus in 1974, their operations were named after Attila, referred to as the Attila Plan. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found the information interesting and informative. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your feedback is very important to us, so please share your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Stay tuned for more exciting topics coming your way. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming videos. Remember, sharing knowledge makes it grow, so share this video with your friends. Until next time, take care.